Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here in the last and the best panel of the day. My name is Hesham Ali. I'll have the pleasure of being the moderator of this panel. This panel is concerned with environmental sustainability as the world population grows from 7 billion people, which we just achieved, to perhaps 9 billion people in the next few decades. We are realizing, there's a growing realization that we cannot continue to use the resources and the energy the same way we have in the past. We cannot continue to pollute the air and generate waste the way we have. So we are all challenged, and we are challenged here in the context of designing and building and maintaining infrastructure. How are we going to do that in a manner that is more green? So this is the focus of this panel. We have a panel here, distinguished panel, that is made of diverse groups, some in academia, some in government, and some in industry. And they are here to share their views about environmental sustainability, how their agencies or how their industry evolved toward better sustainability. What are the potential for better environmental sustainability in the near future? What are their expectations in the near future of what could happen and impact environmental sustainability positively or negatively? What are some of the obstacles that they see in the way of becoming more green? And how we foster leadership of the newer generation about sustainability. These are the questions that I invited the panel members to discuss. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel members. And I invite you to read more about them in the bios that are part of the program. The first panel member is Lois Push. Lois is a policy planning section leader in the Office of Model Development at the Florida Department of Transportation District 4 in Fort Lauderdale. She is responsible for growth management and community planning functions for 5-county region. Lois has a master's degree in urban and regional planning and a bachelor's degree in anthropology from the University of Florida. So she's a Gator. Second to right of Lois is Cesar Constantino, Dr. Cesar Constantino. He is a senior director of process and quality for Titan America. He is responsible for operating excellence through process optimization, equipment upgrades, efficient design of new installations, technical support, and knowledge sharing. Cesar received his master's in structural engineering and PhD in construction materials from the University of Texas at Austin. The next speaker is Randy Kirchain. Randy is a principal research scientist in the Materials System Lab at MIT. He explores the impact of materials technology decisions on the economic and environmental performance of products and systems. Randy received his PhD from MIT. Next to the right of Randy is Dr. Louay Mohammad. He is an Irma Louise Rush Stewart Distinguished Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Louisiana State University. He is also the Director of Engineering Materials Characterization Research Facility at Louisiana Transportation Research Center. Dr. Mohammad received his bachelor's, master's, and PhD in civil engineering at LSU. And the final speaker today is Jim Musselman. He is a state bituminous engineer for the Florida Department of Transportation. He's been with the department in the bituminous section for about 28 years, a lot of experience. Jim is a household name in the world of asphalt. Jim received his bachelor's and master's in civil engineering from the University of Florida. So I'd like to welcome the panel members. Before we go there, just a word of humor here. Jim is, as I mentioned, is a household name when it comes to bituminous engineering. You cannot talk about bituminous without thinking of Jim. So I was reading through the roster of this conference here, and I find another Musselman that works for CEMEX. So I said, I'm not going to share that with Jim because he's going to get a heart attack to know that there is another Musselman in CEMEX. So I talked to him about it today, and it turns out that that other Musselman is no other than Jim's son, Mark, out there. So that shows you how the worlds of concrete and asphalt are perhaps coming together. All right, with no further ado, please help me welcome Lois Push.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm here to share the perspective of a public sector planner on environmental sustainability and transportation infrastructure. Whoops. Oh, sure. Anyway, planners, I think I'm one of the few planners probably in the room. Planners are trained to look long-term as well as short-term. They're trained to think at a systems level, draw on multiple disciplines, and support informed decision-making using best available data and analysis. They also recognize the critical importance of partnerships, building them and maintaining them, and also effectively engaging the public. With that background, we get a lot of practice helping people answer these questions. You know, where are we now? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? Thought I'd start with providing one example of a planning process. The state of Florida has a long-range transportation plan. The Florida Transportation Plan is a plan for all of Florida, not just the Florida Department of Transportation. This plan guide is a policy framework for expending all those state and federal transportation funds, very important decision-making. It also provides policy guidance for all the transportation partners in the state. The current FTP, with a planning horizon of 2060, was developed using a steering committee composed of representatives of the public, private, and civic sectors, outreach to transportation partners and other partners across the state, and also public engagement. The 2060 horizon, long-term, was chosen. It acknowledges the situation today, but also focuses on opportunities and issues that may arise in the next 50 years. Among other things, the FTP envisions greater reliance on public transportation for moving people. It also envisions a new generation of infrastructure, vehicles, fuels, and technologies that will enable travel with fewer crashes, reduced delay, and fewer emissions. The FTP also speaks to the importance of making transportation decisions within the context of statewide, regional, and community visions for the future. Here you see that the plan has 6 goals. The top 3 goals focus on how transportation supports Florida's future. The last 3 goals focus on performance of the transportation system. And 3 issues were identified as critical to the implementation of plans. We need to improve the transportation decision-making process. We need to implement a strategic approach to transportation investment. There's been a lot of talk about funding today, so that we have a reliable funding for statewide, regional, and local transportation priorities. And we also need to identify things, what we're going to do in the short term and how we're going to measure our progress. The visual here, there is a scorecard that goes with the 2060 FTP. Also, FDOT publishes an annual performance report to keep track of how it's doing in implementing this plan. The commissioner mentioned passenger rail options in Florida. You know, auto and truck-centric largely describes where we are now with regard to the carbon footprint associated with moving people and freight in Florida. Having a multimodal transportation system that meets people's travel needs is a common goal in regional and community plans. Notably, travel needs and preferences are changing in a multimodal direction along with changing population demographics. District Secretary Pago mentioned millennials and their preference for doing something other than driving. Delivering a more balanced transportation system, a multimodal transportation system, requires at least 3 things. Investment that supports more viable transportation choices for people, development patterns, how we settle, development patterns that support increased use of non-auto modes of transportation and shorter trips, and also adequate funding, particularly for operating existing and new transit services. You know, as indicated in this slide, this is the state of Florida. This is someone else's slide. I don't take credit. This first line you see appear, if you click it, that is the CSX corridor and the existing Amtrak route. Click it again, and you'll see along the eastern seaboard, there's a proposed reinstitution of intercity passenger rail on the FEC rail corridor from Jacksonville down to Miami. Clicking again, you'll see the existing Tri-Rail commuter service route. Clicking again, you may have heard, those of you who live in the region, about Tri-Rail Coastal Link, which would expand commuter passenger service to the